History of Mental Health by Juan Luis Cortez Cervantes. Lesson number 3, Science, Definition and Function. We have already had a first approach to scientific thought, and not as part of an exclusively European heritage or as the manifestation of North American cultural and economic superiority. These observations are not made lightly. Science is at the same time a tool for the progress of humanity and a violent field where racial and economic prejudices are not left aside. Let us understand science as the set of practical knowledge that a culture has developed to sustain itself in the face of threats that come from internal sources such as diseases or from external threats such as other cultures or the environment. Thus, science is made up of the most basic knowledge that the thinkers of all humanity have contributed to ensure their own survival as individuals or as a group. And as the entire world was integrated into an increasingly larger human group, the registration and exchange of knowledge allowed an increasingly extensive guarantee of life among the members of the human race, in such a way that science as the registration of practical intellectual activity gradually lost its relationship with practicality or immediate functionality. This does not mean that science as a whole is useless, but that little by little its relationship with survival and practicality was softening. In such a way that we went from seeking the transmission of healing methods, the technique of building houses, the observation of the stars to calculate the seasons and obtaining food, to including current theses such as the first case of homosexual necrophilia in the Mallard. Or also, Sailor Moon Made Me Gay, the subjectivity and identity of the Mexican millennial gay man from the consumption of Sailor Moon. Real scientific developments or theses that reveal not a uselessness, but a specific characteristic of the scientific community. This trait is the desire to integrate knowledge and put it at the service of a useful narrative that only the scientific community can understand. To put it in other words, much simpler and perhaps more severe words, we can point to the current scientific community as a group of thinkers who are self-satisfied with their own proposals. Proposals that are not very useful outside the scientific community, but that within this community even offer a certain fame and notoriety. And yet, this complacency is limited when it is pointed out that on many occasions science itself has been put at the service of various industries, including the military. An example of this relationship between science and industry is the development of atomic weapons by physicists during World War II. A development that took the relationship between countries to a point of no return. Today, countries that have nuclear weapons have a diplomatic advantage over those that do not. A kind of silent threat that reveals a very different face of science as a tool at the service of economic, political, and military power. But what is science? Although we have defined science as the body of practical knowledge, we can extend that definition as the body of knowledge about a particular object or phenomenon. This set of knowledge is obtained today in a specific way. Although the philosophical tradition seeks to monopolize this knowledge behind its name of scientific method, the truth is that we can approach the steps and point out their naturalness in the human figure. But before taking that tour, let us point out that the objective of monopolizing scientific knowledge based on a method obeys the need to separate science from religion, and at the same time, brings scientific activity closer to a mere protocol of thought that is strange for a human being inserted in any cultural context. It is as if science and scientific knowledge has become a label that claims to belong to a group of people who name themselves superior to others because they have named themselves and whose main objective is to produce papers that only serve their sectarian purposes. A relationship between scientific and religious thought that we had pointed out in the previous lesson, but we should not consider it as a static relationship. If we have established an energetic exchange as an elemental condition of living beings, this same dynamic is manifested or shown in human activities and productions, including science itself as a social and cultural movement. Sometimes science is not separated from religion as an effort to control individuals who claim to hold this or that belief system, whether it be called Pastafarianism or Jehovah's Witnesses or the scientific method. And sometimes thinkers from one side attack thinkers from another basically as if their speech threatened the power of the other, whether they are scientists or believers. And this is not out of stubbornness or foolishness, but as a survival mechanism. Now, to highlight this human naturalness of the scientific method, let us address its historical development, remembering that not every human being has had the opportunity to access the developments or studies made by their peers and at the same time, Not all scholars have left a record of their studies so that others can follow the evolution of their thinking or question them at another time or place.